Erev Tov, everyone. Erev Tov. It is Monday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the east side of the United States, here in the diaspora. This is the House of Seven Beggars. Therefore, it must be Zeyde's Story Corner, of course. Yes, Zeyde's Story Corner. And we are going to be continuing on with the stories of the silly world of Helm. Hope you are enjoying it. And so, anything new going on? No, nothing really. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's been kind of quiet, hasn't it? Well, at least we're on the air. Yes, at least we're back on the air. We have a new computer, and things seem to be going very well with it. Let's see who we have in the chat room. We have Donald and Veronica and Marilyn. Regina is with us. Hello, Regina. And let's see, Marshall and Kelsey Lynn and probably Ralph watching in the background and others soon to come. Yes, soon to come. Fashionably late. Yeah, fashionably late. Okay, let's go with that. So, yeah, we are back after being off for a few weeks. We were on last week, of course, and we are going to continue on with the stories from Helm. And I guess we should probably get to it. Yes, we should. Okay, so let me get you on your camera. Well, that took long enough. Yeah, I know. I couldn't quite get quite hit the button just right. So, can we adjust the camera? Yeah, I think we can adjust that camera a little bit here. Let's see. But, maybe a little bit there. Yeah, that looks okay. Okay. So we are going to continue our stories of the silly world of Helm. Tonight we start off with the story of the snowfall. It was the first big snowfall in the wonderful little village of Helm. The children who were all in school rejoiced as they saw each snowflake fall. By the time the children were ready to leave school, the entire village of Helm was covered with pure white blanket of snow. Since this is the first snowfall of the year, one of the wise men of Helm exclaimed, we should not let the children spoil the beauty of the snow. Indeed, replied another. Therefore, let us get word to our school teacher that she is going to keep the children in school until we find a way to get them home without spoiling the beauty of the fresh fallen snow. So, a delegation of wise men trudged through the snow to the home of the sage of Helm. This is indeed a problem, the sage declared, shaking his head in deep contemplation. If the children run out of the schoolhouse, they will make ugly looking tracks in the snow and spoil the beauty of winter. Of course, if the good Lord wanted us to have children's footprints in the snow, he would have sent down snow with footprints already in them. Well, you can't argue with that logic. No, I guess you can't, really. Okay, so anyway, however, since this is not the case, obviously he meant us to have pure white snow. Okay. But on the other hand, okay, that's always going to be the case. There is always another hand. Okay, so anyway, on the other hand, the old sage declared, we cannot let the children stay in the schoolhouse all night long. As everyone sat in deep thought, the sage of Helm looked up and announced, "Of course, the answer is so simple. Since we do not want the children to spoil the beauty of the snow, all we have to do is go to each child's house and tell the parents they must go to the school, carry their children home on their shoulders." Everyone cheered. What brilliance! Yeah. So all of the wise men of Helm rushed out from the house of the old sage and knocked on the door of each house in Helm to tell the parents to go to the school to carry their children home on their shoulders. In a little while, the children were comfortably in their homes as the snow continued to fall all night long. In the morning, the sage of Helm gathered with his friends as they looked out into the landscape, marveling to themselves how it was possible for them to get all the children home from school without the children making one step in the new fallen snow. So now, in the village of Helm, whenever it snows, parents come to the schoolhouse to carry their children home on their shoulders because they wish to retain the beauty of freshly fallen snow. Okay, so that was one story. Let us go on to the next. This one is called The Sting. Once upon a time, a very well-dressed individual came to the town of Helm and went directly to Yunkel's restaurant. He sat down, and Yunkel was quickly at his side. The well-dressed stranger looked at Yunkel and asked, "Are you a betting man?" Yunkel was surprised and almost stammered as he said, "That depends." "Well," exclaimed the stranger, "I am willing to pay you 10 times the price of this meal if you can guess what I am. On the other hand, if you cannot, you'll give me the free meal for nothing, okay?" Yunkel listened intently, then asked, "How many guesses will I be permitted?" "Unlimited," boasted the stranger. "That's 10 times the price of a meal if I guess what you are, and you pay nothing for the meal if I fail with an unlimited amount of guesses," Yunkel repeated. The stranger shook his head in agreement and then added, "I will even write down what I am on this little piece of paper and put it in this envelope and seal it. In fact, I will even permit you to hold it." "Okay," exclaimed the uncle as he began to serve the meal. No sooner had he served the salad, Yonko began to ask, "Are you a doctor?" The stranger shook his head. "No." "Are you a lawyer?" Yonko asked. The stranger shook his head once more and continued to eat. "Are you a teacher, a farmer, a judge, a this, a that?" The uncle continued to question him, and for every question the man simply said, "No." Finally, his uncle served the dessert, and after going through every occupation known to man, he sat down in despair and frustration and said, "Okay, you win. The meal is on the house." Then he slowly removed the envelope from his pocket. Uncle turned to the stranger. "Now, let me see what you wrote." He tore open the envelope and read the words the stranger had written. "I'm hungry." The stranger smiled with a twinkle, straightened his tie, thanked him for his hospitality, and then bade him goodbye. "I'm hungry." Yeah, I heard that. It's a good one. We ought to try that. Yeah, I don't know if that would be a good one to try in a restaurant around here. I'm sure somebody would get it. Yeah, probably. No sense of humor, right? Yeah, okay. Okay, this story is called The Stone Storehouses. This is a good story. I'm sure it is. Well, you would know if you made it to rehearsal once in a while. Never mind, we go back to this. Okay, anyway. The village of Helm had a record harvest of crops. The fruit trees were full, and the grain was firm, and the vegetables were abundant. "Now that we have such a wonderful harvest," said one of the farmers, "where will we store all this food for the cold winter that is approaching?" "Let us build storehouses," said another farmer. "But where will we get the wood and stone for so many storehouses?" asked another. "That is simple," said a third. "We will go to the top of the mountain where there are many small stones and bring them down. We will build many storehouses with these stones." And so the silly little men of Helm climbed the mountain and began carrying the stones down the mountain. It was a tedious task, and the farmers worked well into the night carrying down the stones. The very next morning, the old sage saw the farmers climbing the mountain once more to bring down more stones. "My brothers," the sage called out, "why don't you simply roll the stones down the mountain?" The farmers of Helm stopped for a moment, then began to mutter to themselves, "Look at the wisdom of our great sage. See how smart he is." Another joined in, "Such wisdom, such brilliance. He does not want to see us work so hard." A third joined in, "A blessing on his head." So the farmers gathered up all the stones they carried down the day before and carried them up to the top of the mountain where they had been gathered in the first place. Then every stone was back on top of the mountain. They picked them up, and one at a time they began rolling them down the mountain, just as their great sage suggested. Okay, this is a good one. Yeah, I know that was a pretty good one. Okay, so this also a good one here. So this goes again. This is one of those stories about the great sage of Helm that makes you go, maybe this guy really is that smart. Okay, We go on. Once upon a time, in the village of Helm, there was a storekeeper who took advantage of his customers by overcharging them. How could we teach him a lesson? Muttled the tailor asked the old sage of Helm. The old sage thought for a moment and said, I have an idea. The following day, he walked into the small shop and greeted the owner. How much is this loaf of bread? He asked. That loaf is 15 zlotys, replied the shady storekeeper. Good, exclaimed the old sage. Wrap it up. The storekeeper put it into a bag and handed it to the sage. Just then, the sage asked, How much are these tomatoes? The grocer replied, Those tomatoes are also 15 zlotys. The old sage commented, Oh, since they are both the same price, here, take back the bread. I would prefer the tomatoes. He handed the bread back to the storekeeper, put the tomatoes in his pocket, and started walking towards the door. Just a minute, my friend, shouted the storekeeper. You haven't paid for those tomatoes. Of course not, replied the sage. I gave you the bread for the tomatoes, which are the very same price. That's true, exclaimed the storekeeper, but you did not pay for the bread. Why should I? Asked the old sage. Am I taking the bread? The storekeeper scratched his head, trying to figure out what had happened. After the old sage left the store, the storekeeper thought to himself, Oi, does he have a system? Later in the day, the old sage went back and returned the tomatoes. I tell you, sometimes I don't think the old sage is as foolish as he's made out to be. Okay, we go on to our next story, which is called The Stranger and the Cemetery. In the early days of the village of Helm, there were only 10 Jews. And so the story goes that a traveler from a far off land stopped over in the tiny village of Helm. There is something in your town that bothers me, he said, realizing that these were not the smartest people in the world. Yes, asked the sage of Helm. What is it that bothers you? Coming into your town, I noticed that you have a cemetery and a shul. As a practical Jew, it would strike me that you need either a cemetery or a shul, certainly not both. What is your reasoning? Asked the sage. Well, began the stranger, if you all live, why do you need a cemetery? And if one of you dies, of what use is the shul when there will only be 9 of you left and you would not be able to make a minyan? The old sage of Helm thought for a moment and agreed that the stranger had a good point. Then he thought for a few more moments and exclaimed, You may be correct, but we also have another reason for our cemetery. What is that? Asked the stranger. We need the cemetery in case a stranger should pass through our town and pass away. The old sage smiled as the stranger raced for the door. I am telling you, I think this guy has more on the ball than they let on. Okay. This one, I think I'm going to try this one. You're going to try this one? Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. So I may try that this summer. This summer. Yeah, when I go fishing, I think I might actually try this. So I explain now. Okay, you go ahead and you explain. Okay, so this story is called The Stream. It was a beautiful spring day. Menachem, a simple soul from Helm, wandered out of the village and into the nearby forest. He walked and admired the trees. Then he sat down to rest. Now, just past the trees was a small stream. As he sat admiring nature, he noticed a man standing in the middle of the stream, holding a mirror just above the water. Menachem's curiosity began to grow. What is a man doing in the middle of a stream with a mirror aimed at the water? He stood up and walked to the bank. Hello, he called out to the man in the middle of the stream. The man turned abruptly and whispered back, Shh, I am fishing. How can you be fishing without a hook or even a fishing pole? You don't even have a line. Shh, replied the man. I'm fishing with my new invention. What kind of invention is that? Menachem questioned softly. This is the most humane way in the world to catch fish. I use no pole, no line, nor do I have any use for a hook. This is absolutely the most humane technique of fishing known to men, he replied. Can you tell me how it is used? I really can't. You see, this is my invention, and anyone who wants to learn this technique will have to pay me 100 rubles. 100 rubles to learn how to fish with a mirror? Are you crazy? Who would pay you such money? But Menachem's curiosity began overwhelming. All right, he relented. I'll pay you 100 rubles. Now, you tell me how it is done. He handed the man 100 rubles, and then the man began to explain. You see, all I have here is a small mirror. Now, I aim the mirror into the water and wait until a fish comes by. When I see the fish, I focus the sun's rays into the mirror, and the rays of light temporarily blind the fish. The fish becomes confused, and while he is trying to figure out what to do, I lean into the brook and grab him. And that is my technique. Menachem was disturbed. You mean to tell me you catch fish like this? Tell me, how many fish have you caught today? The man looked up, scratched his head gently, and said, Today? I guess about 4, no, 5. You're the 5th one today. So, the next time you see anyone fishing in a brook without a fishing pole, hook, or line, and using only a mirror, you can rest assured he is a trickster from hell. So be aware. Okay. Fishing with a mirror. I like that. We tried that this summer. I Okay. I mean, if you want to try it, I guess you should go ahead and try it. Okay, we'll see what happens this summer. Yeah, I will let you all know how it goes. Okay. This story is called The Suitor. Once upon a time, in the little village of Helm, a shidduch was proposed between Motel the tailor and Reb Lezer the butcher's daughter Sarah. Things were looking good between them and their families. One day, Motel came to Reb Lezer's shop in the middle of the afternoon. He was quite nervous as he approached the older gentleman. Reb Lezer, the man asked with great hesitation, I have to ask you a question. Yes, yes, my boy, Lezer replied, placing his hand on the youth's shoulder. The youth stammered, I want to ask. But before he could finish, the old Lezer exclaimed, Congratulations, my boy! By all means, you may marry my daughter. The youth pale as he smiled uneasily. Uh, Reb Lezer, I want to ask you something very important. Reb Lezer shook the youth's hands and repeated, You don't have to go through the embarrassment of asking me outright. I already gave my consent. She will make a good wife. Muffle tried to clear his throat. You don't understand. I need to borrow 200 lighters for a new machine. I was putting mine in the shop. What? Shouted Laser. You want to borrow 200 lighters from me? Certainly not. I hardly know you. Okay, we are going to take our break now. And when we return, we will continue on to see what is up in the city of Helm. So everybody stay tuned. We will be back in 6.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies, everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. The show starts in 2 minutes. The show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And we are back. Okay. So, we continue on with our stories. Regina, my dear, if you would please call the rabbi tomorrow evening. He has something to ask you. He asked me to pass that message on to you. So if you would do that for me, my dear, I would very much appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. This story, the end of the year is coming up. And pretty soon, whether we like it or not, tax time comes. So here's a story about the tax collector you should keep in mind. Okay, we go. Once upon a time, in the little village of Helm, the Tsar, Tui, had sent his tax collector to harass the simple souls who lived there. Only those who paid their taxes were given an identity card and were permitted to walk the streets. However, some of the residents managed to escape the eagle eye of the tax collector and remained in hiding. And so it was that one day the old sage of Helm, who had paid his taxes, met Shepsel, the dairy farmer. Shepsel had successfully managed to escape the tax collector for weeks. However, he did not have a permit to walk the streets. On this particular day, the old sage met Shepsel as he was going to shul. "Won't you join me in the evening prayers?" the old sage asked. "I would," sighed Shepsel, "but I don't have a permit to walk the streets. And if the tax collector catches me, he will send me to jail." "Don't worry," exclaimed the old sage. "Now, the tax collector is probably having his dinner right now." So the two men started to walk to the little shul in the Helm. Suddenly, out of the shadows, the tax collector saw the two men and shouted, "Halt!" The old sage whispered to Shipsel, "You continue to walk slowly, and I will run. The tax collector will chase me. By the time he catches up with me, you will have a chance to escape into the shadows." Sure enough, as the tax collector approached, the old sage began to run with all his might. The tax collector, a rather portly fellow, began to chase the old sage. When the sage and the tax collector were about a block away, Shepsel ducked into the alleyway and made a successful escape into the shadows. Meanwhile, the tax collector continued to chase the sage. Finally, when he caught up to him, the tax collector shouted indignantly, "Okay, show me your permit, that is, if you have one." And the old sage put his hand in his pocket and, to the tax collector's surprise, pulled out the precious permit. The tax collector scratched his head and asked, "I don't understand. If you had this permit, why did you run?" "Oh," sighed the old sage, "my doctor told me to get as much exercise as possible. So I run every chance I can." "But surely you saw me running in back of you," the tax collector snarled. "Of course I did," the old sage exclaimed. "But I figure you just had the same doctor." "Oh." "Okay. Remember that for the tax man, huh?" "Okay. So if you're ever in Helm and you see a fellow running with a uniform officer running in back of him, in all probability, they have the same doctor who prescribed exercise. Simple as that, huh? Okay. This one is called The Teacup Salesman. Once upon a time, in the silly world of Helm, merchants from all over the world came to the tiny village to sell their wares. One day, a merchant from the village of Chutzpah, up in the north, entered the village and set up his little stand in the center of the village square. "Teacups! Teacups! I have all kinds of teacups!" he shouted. I have teacups for people who drink with their right hand, teacups for people who drink with their left hand, and teacups for people who may drink tea with either hand. When word of this unique salesman spread about the village, the citizens of Helm flocked to see his wares. Indeed, said one Helmite, we have never heard of a teacups for right-handed people, nor left-handed people, or even people who have no hand preference. Can you show them to us? The merchant bowed proudly and said, of course. That is why I'm here. He quickly took out a set of teacups and turned all the handles to the right. These are special teacups for right-handed people. Then he took out another set of teacups and turned the handles to the left. And these are teacups for people who drink tea with their left hand. Then he took out a set of teacups with no handles. And these, my friend, are teacups for people who prefer to drink tea with either hand. Then he turned to one Helmite and asked, now, which cup would you like? The Helmite shrugged and said softly, but I do not drink tea. Ah, said the merchant, for you I have something very special. He leaned over in his suitcase and took out a handful of cups that had no bottom in them. He displayed them with pride and exclaimed, and these you have the only teacups in the world for people who don't drink tea. Wonderful, exclaimed the Helmite. I'll take two, because my wife doesn't drink tea either. In a few minutes, the merchant sold out his entire stock of teacups with no bottoms, because most of the people in Helm were not tea drinkers. Must be coffee, huh? Yeah, probably. Okay. Teacups. Anyway, this one is called The Team. The little village of Helm was known throughout the world as a place where people were not too bright. So it was decided that Mordechai, the Malamed, would go to the big city to see what he could learn in order to improve the education of the children of Helm. Good idea. After 2 weeks, he returned and told the old sage, do you know that every school makes their students take part in some sport activity? So, it was decided that in Helm they should begin a physical education program for the boys. A soccer team was soon formed, and it was excellent. The star soccer player was a young man named Yitzhak. When the sports program was announced, it was said that a student had to be able to pass all his subjects before he could participate in the sport. With Yitzhak, it was a problem because smart he wasn't. But as a soccer player, he was magnificent. However, when Yitzhak kept failing all his subjects, the old sage of Helm ordered that Yitzhak not participate in the sport unless he passed at least one subject. Meanwhile, arrangements had been made for the best soccer players of Helm University to play the best soccer players of Minsk College. However, with Yitzhak out of the game, it appeared as if Helm wouldn't even stand a chance. Yitzhak was brought before the sage with the coach. I will ask you one question, said the sage. If you answer it correctly, you will be able to play in the game and save the day. If you do not, you will have to go back to your boats. Yitzhak and the coach agreed. The sage thought for a moment and then asked, how much is 12 and 12? Yitzhak thought and thought, and then he stammered, 22? The old sage shook his head sadly and said Yitzhak could not play. The coach pleaded Yitzhak's case. Please, old sage, reconsider. The boy is tried very hard. Besides, he only missed by one. So, the old sage reconsidered. So next time you pass through the village of Helm, and somebody asks you how much is 12 and 12, be careful what you answer, because they have some strange ideas. Oy. Math not a big subject in Helm, I think. Yeah, I think so. I think so. Yeah. Probably not a lot of theoretical physicists come out of Helm. Probably not. Yeah. Probably Dr. Michio Kaku probably did not come from Helm. Probably not. Like your aunt. Now let's not start that about my aunt again. Don't get so touchy. Okay. Okay, we go on to the next story, okay? Is that okay with you? Yes, okay. As long as you leave my family out of it, then we can go on with the stories. Boy, he's so touchy. Okay, anyway. Here we go. I kid the rabbi. I know his family is not from Helm. They're from Minsk. Okay. No, they're not. No, they're not. They're from Hungary. Okay, anyway, we go on with Helm. Okay, so this story is called The Telegraph. In the wonderful, I want you to pay attention to this because I think it is important for everybody to know how such things actually work. Okay, so here we go. It's great explanation. Here we go. In the wonderful world of Helm, a letter was received by an old couple. Look, Hannah, Abraham shouted. It is a letter from my brother. He says he is very poor and has no money. He says he has very large holes in his shoes, and when it rains, the water wets his feet. He says he does not know how long he will be able to live because he catches cold so easily. Hannah sighed. And he lives such a long distance from here. How could we send him money in time to save his life? Let's go to the sage of Helm. He will have an answer, Abraham replied. Well, of course he would have an answer, wouldn't he? Okay, let's see what the sage has to say. So the two hurried to the home of the wisest man in Helm. They showed him the letter and tearfully explained that it would take weeks for either money or shoes to reach their poor relative. The wise man of Helm smiled and said, You have no need to worry, because there is a solution. Didn't you know that in our modern world there are new inventions such as the telegraph? They recently placed poles in our village with wires that run to the city where your brother lives. Through the telegraph, you can reach anyone. Oh, thank you, they cried, and quickly went to the village to purchase a new pair of shoes for their poor relative. Then they went to the place where they saw the telegraph poles and the telegraph wires. The old man climbed the pole, tied the shoes to the wires, placed a few rubles in the shoes. He also placed his brother's name and address in the shoes, and then climbed down and went back home. A short time later, a tramp happened by. He saw the new shoes dangling from the wire, so he climbed up the pole, untied the shoes, and, to his delight, discovered the money with the name and address that was placed there by the old couple. "What good people these are," said the tramp. "They leave gifts for the poor in the strangest places. Indeed, when I am in the next village, I will stop in and say thank you to the man who left the name and address in these new shoes." He removed his old worn-out shoes, put on the new ones, and continued on his way. The following day, the old couple passed the place where they had tied the shoes. Seeing they were gone, and the worn shoes in their place, they jumped for joy. "Indeed, it is a miracle. See, the new shoes we sent are gone in less than a day. He even sent back his old shoes with the holes. Indeed, the sage of Helm is wise." Okay. Hey. We have time for one more. Okay. Speaking of telegraphs, this one is called the telephone. Once upon a time, in the village of Helm, progress was in the air, and history was about to be made. The very first telephone was being installed in the village square. Everyone gathered around the strange device. After the telephone was installed, everyone went to the old sage of Helm and asked him how the device worked. The old sage scratched his head and explained, "Well, it is like a very long dog that stretches from here to Minsk. Someone in Minsk steps on the dog's tail, and the dog barks in Helm." Everyone was amazed at his brilliance. Then one day, the phone rang in the town square. Everyone was afraid to pick it up, so they ran for the old sage. The sage picked up the phone and said, "Hello?" The voice on the other end shouted, "This is Purnik. I am calling from Minsk. I am stranded here. I need someone to come here in a hurry and with 500 zlotas." The old sage shouted back in the phone, "I'm sorry, I cannot hear you, Purnik." Purnik shouted back in the phone, "I am in Minsk. I must get 500 lighters immediately. Send someone here with 500 lighters immediately. I'm sorry, shouted the old sage, but I cannot hear you. At that point, the operator interrupted. I don't understand it, sir. I can hear him perfectly. The old sage shouted in the phone. You can hear him perfectly? The operator said yes. The old sage sighed. Then you send him the 500 zloitas. And so, till this very day in the little village of Helm, whenever anybody needs money, they call the operator directly. Ah. Okay, that reminds me of that joke that Rabbi Ansel told you. Yeah, that is very, very similar. Yeah. Maybe we do a special one just to tell that joke. Yeah, we'll put it on old Jews telling jokes. Okay, maybe then. Okay, I want to thank everybody for being here this evening. I hope you will return to be with us next week when we bring you more stories from him. Actually, next year. Yeah, actually, it will be next year. Okay, then we see you next year then. In the meantime, don't forget the Torah study in depth with Rabbi A. And Friday night is Kabbalat and Ma'ariv, the Shabbat service at 8 p.m. All times are Eastern. And on Shabbat morning at 10 a.m. for Shachrit and Musaf. Until then, my dear friends, we simply say, what are we going to say? Well, hang on. Let me get my bearings here. Okay, we're ready. Okay, so until then, my dear friends, we simply say, Laila Tov.